Mayor Hodges, the public is in.
Thank you, City Manager Seisland, and good evening all. Welcome to a special meeting of the Grosse Pointe Park City Council for the primary purpose of selecting a replacement to a vacancy on the City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. and would ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Councilmember Caulfield,
Present.
Fluid,
Here.
Gallagher,
Here.
Raylan,
Present.
and Wiener.
Present.
Thank you, Clerk Blayhut. I assume we do have a quorum, so the meeting can proceed, and I would ask that we now move into the Pledge Allegiance of the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Rowland, I see you have a hand up.
No, I was hitting mute on my screen.
All right, thank you very much. Then we will move to keep the meeting moving efficiently. We will move into candidate interviews, and I will start with setting the stage a bit and hand it over to City Manager Seisland to take it from there. But tonight we have a very important decision to make. We will begin the process of empowering someone to lead on behalf of our community. The vacancy that we are facing is the result of the election, which occurred on November 2nd, at which time a member of council, myself, vacated a seat to assume the role of mayor, leaving a term on City Council with 2 years remaining in that term. That seat now must be filled. The charter provides for council to select a replacement within 60 days of the vacancy. That clock began ticking on November 5th. If unsuccessful in making a selection during the 60-day timeframe, the charter calls for a special election. In order to wisely use resources and to ensure stability on the governing body and in the community, the goal is to appoint within that 60-day timeframe, and with tonight being an important step in that direction. It should also be noted that a second vacancy, the result of Councilmember Fluid's expected resignation on December 13th, will be dealt with at such time it becomes official. For that reason, the period during which applications can be submitted for consideration has been extended to December 10th. And if it is the will of the final two candidates of the three that are identified tonight comprising the pool, they will also be considered at that time for the position, in addition to any new applicants. So this evening, our efforts will be directed toward identification of an individual to serve in the first vacancy only, created as a result of that November 2nd election. So I should also announce to you that we are now down to 15 candidates. Mr. Richard DeLoof has rescinded his application. So please note that we just learned of that very recently. With that, our City Manager Seisland and City Clerk Jane Blayhut will lead the process. And I will now ask that City Manager Seisland outline that process for us. Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Hodges, members of council and the public tonight. This is how the process will play out. We have 15 candidates for City Council, and now learning of Mr. DeLoof dropping out. What we're going to do is the first set of 8 randomly selected candidates will be interviewed promptly at 5 p.m. Each candidate will receive the 3 same questions, allowing for a 2-minute response time. The clerk or manager will be asking those questions. The second set of 8 randomly selected candidates will be interviewed around 6. Each candidate will receive the 3 same questions, allowing for a 2-minute response time. The clerk or manager will be asking those questions. After completion of round 1 interviews, the council will email the clerk and manager their top 5 candidates. The clerk and manager will tally up the results and announce publicly from each council member the top 5, which will move on to round 2. Those who are in attendance and did not advance may be excused or welcome to stay the rest of the meeting. The top 5 candidates will be interviewed around 7:30. Candidates will receive a new set of questions, different than the first round, allowing for a 3-minute response time. After completion of round 2 interviews, the council will email the clerk and manager their top 3 candidates. The clerk and manager will tally up the results and announce publicly from each council member the top 3. Those who are in attendance and did not advance may be excused or welcome to stay the rest of the meeting. The council will either debate, make a motion to select a candidate, or bring for consideration to the December 13th City Council meeting. That is the process that we'll lay out tonight. Mayor Hodges, if there's nothing else, I can go ahead and get started, or how would you like me to proceed?
I would like to add, City Manager Seisland, that originally for the public's benefit, so they can schedule, we did identify December 14th as a special meeting to consider the second vacancy. Due to some scheduling conflicts, we're going to revert back to the December 13th regular meeting and attempt to accomplish that at that time. So those of you out there that impacts, you can begin planning. Secondly, in my role as mayor, I did attempt to implement some systematic, objective, and empirical decision-making tools by sharing with my colleagues a skill set matrix that is in alignment with the goals and objectives that we as a community have and the priorities that we have, like infrastructure, like Trombley, like underfunded liabilities, and we'll be looking for those sorts of things when considering our candidates, as well as a ranking system, just to help, again, put some science into the decision so that it's more objective rather than subjective. So just so the community knows those tools are out there as well. So with that, I believe City Manager Seisland, we wanted our city attorney to share a bit about the Open Meetings Act and the fact that we are in compliance with the approach that we've identified. City Manager Howlett, excuse me, City Attorney Howlett, please.
I don't know if that's a promotion or, yeah, there was some discussion, I think, late last week, and maybe some confusion about the process. The process we're following tonight is the process that was intended all along. I think there was some mention of secret ballots that are, I think that was just a misapplied term. All of there are two critical elements under the OMA. One, there's no set formal requirement for a process of voting. So we're not obligated to follow like a roll call vote or a show of hands or anything like that. And so the selection process we've outlined fits within the OMA that way. The critical issue with the OMA is that every decision, deliberation be public. And so the fact that selections of candidates are going to be emailed fits within the OMA, provided those selections are made public. So as City Manager Seisland outlined, when those are read to the public and attributed to each council member, that'll satisfy the requirements of the OMA. So the long and short of it is I took a close look at it. I worked closely with City Manager Seisland and Clerk Blayhut on developing the process, and the process is compliant with the OMA and with the city's charter.
Thank you very much for that explanation. It's important that the community has confidence in the process and trust in our ability to make this decision effectively, and to know that we will always adhere to best practices. So thank you, City Attorney. City Manager Seisland, are you ready to take it from here?
We are ready. Let me just go ahead and get my timer real quick. And while I do that, I'd like to call up, and please turn on your camera if you're able to. Martin McMillan, Jay Bonnell, Robert Farhat, Mark Farnan, John Enteman, Brian Brenner, and Reagan Graves. And while I go ahead and get the timer up.
Mine says it's unable to start the video.
You don't have to have your camera on if you don't elect to.
Well, I'm trying to, but it says,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, me
says-
too.
it says unable to start video. You can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Same.
1 second while we try and see what we can do here.
Host is asking you to start, okay? I think that might-
Okay, looks like we have you. Mr. Martin McMillan, we're going to go ahead and ask you 3 questions. What I'm going to do is put up the timer for 2 minutes, and you should hear a beeping sound at the end after the conclusion of your question. So let's go ahead and get started. Mr. McMillan, what areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
I would say the number one thing is the infrastructure. That interests me the most. The budget I know is going to be a concern, especially with COVID and the additional expenses that the city incurred. Those are two of the big things that interest me the most.
Okay, thank you.
That one, or do I have 2 minutes to answer that one question?
2 minutes to answer that one question.
Oh, wow. 2 minutes for each question.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't understand that. Okay, so those are some of the things that the lead pipe issue concerns me. I know that we're required to replace the lead pipes, and I do believe that we've started on some of that. That's also a concern of mine. Addressing the water storm management deficiencies, I think that's a concern of almost every single Grosse Pointe Park resident. Another thing that I'm part of the Grosse Pointe Park Rec Commission, but updating our marina, I think, is important as well. We have such great amenities in our parks. Our marina is something that I think that we could all agree could use some additional work. Public safety is another thing that I think we have to continue to address and stay on top of, because that's critical. And like I said before, the budget challenges with that are required with our infrastructure, I think is going to be a big challenge. And I'm concerned about all of those. Those are my top issues, I think, that concern me about Grosse Pointe Park and interest me to want to put my name in. I also wanted to thank everybody, all the council people, for this opportunity, and also all the other applicants that put their name out there as well, because this isn't easy. Everyone's got to come out here and put their name out there and go ahead and say, yes, count me in. So I want to thank the other applicants for their commitment to our city as well. That's
Okay.
it.
What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
I think the strengths that I would bring to the community is that I'm passionate about Grosse Pointe Park. I'm upbeat. I love the park. I've lived here my entire life, really, and I've been serving our community since I've been an adult. And it's really not an understatement for me to say that I've worked with thousands of Grosse Pointe Park families to instill pride in our city, especially through the Grosse Pointe Park Little League, and working together to bring people together on field day to come together for the common good of our city. I'm a proven civic leader with the expertise in listening. I listen, I discuss, and I do my research, and I make recommendations to move forward. So I think that's important. I also know how to engage community members to achieve the common goal. And I believe that I can be a valuable team member and complement the expertise of both our newly elected and the experienced council members that we currently have. And I want to give back to our community that's been so good to me. I think that's can you repeat the rest of the question there, Nick?
What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Okay, and the other strengths that I think I have is my experience on the Recreation Commission. I'm in my second term there, and I was appointed in 2015, and I've been working with my fellow commission members to bring to improve and enhance our amenities that we have in our great parks. My experience with Grosse Pointe Park Little League, I think, is important. My involvement at my church and also in the Grosse Pointe Men's Club Foundation, working with our community. I think those are some of the assets that I can bring to our council.
Okay, thank you. Final question. In a council manager form of government, what is your role in understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Okay. I would say that as a city council person, our job would be to hire a city manager, and the city manager and their administration should go out and run the city for us, for all the residents. But I look at my role on being on the city council would be more to establish policy, to give guidance to our city manager, to help the city manager any way we can, set policy, and also I think it's important to set goals. Short-term goals are important as well as long-term goals, but I think our job should be to help set those, but let our city manager run the city and do their job. We have to hold them accountable, but I think we need to let the city manager and the rest of the administration, do the day-to-day work, I would say. The day-to-day operations is for the city manager and their administration to carry out. But that's the way I look at our job on city council: set policies, set goals, and assist wherever possible, not get in the way. Let the city manager and their competent people manage our city for us.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. We're going to move on to our next candidate now, Mr. Jay Bonnell. If you could have a camera, could please turn on your screen.
I've attempted to do that. Can you see that?
I can see you.
Good.
All right. So, Mr. Bonnell, we're going to have Clerk Blayhut give you the 3 questions. And as soon as she gets started, I'm going to set the timer.
Sounds good.
Okay, what area of focus within the city interests you the most?
Well, I think everybody who comes to the table tonight is going to discuss the infrastructure issues that we face, particularly with the events of this past summer, the flooding issues that we had. Because that's going to be a common theme, I also wanted to touch on what I feel are some really exciting opportunities. Grosse Pointe Park has become not just a premier community, but a very unique community in the Detroit metro area. And I want to work toward ways to make that more visible and more compelling, because we have become a destination suburban community that has a lot of unique parts to it. We have the Cabbage Patch area, which is very unique. It's almost like a college town feel to it. Yes, it is also host, though, to young families, LGBTQ people, artistic folks, young professionals, and then the larger community, which is an affluent community, has a lot of unique and elite features to it. And it's sort of almost cheerleading the community and bringing forward the best and working toward those goals. And some of those things that were mentioned, like improving the marina, types of things like that, will really help us in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
What strength would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Well, I've had a unique career background. Luckily, I've had the opportunity to work in a lot of very different roles. I started my career working in hospitality, working in private clubs, Lockmore Club here in Grosse Pointe Woods. Moved on to General Motors for 10 years. And then the last few years have been working in healthcare. And I often have been given roles in those various career paths in jobs that didn't exist before I took them. And I was given those jobs because I had to break through silos. I had to build consensus. I had to work toward common goals. And I kind of got a reputation as a consensus builder, as somebody who could really reach across a functional silo and make things happen and get things done. And it's something I've been able to use very successfully. I worked at Grosse Pointe Beaumont Hospital for a period of a couple of years and was very proud of the programs that I was able to put in place there, as well as cost savings initiatives. I got promoted to sort of the CFO role at Beaumont Wayne Hospital out near the airport. And again, was able to be sort of a point person on bringing forward some big ticket projects, getting a lot of different stakeholders involved and engaged, and stick to a timeline. And also, I brought forward an idea that I've been pretty proud of doing a sort of a post-mortem analysis. When we put some sort of process in place, looking back, after a year, let's say, setting some metrics and seeing how successful we were and trying to find out where our strengths and weaknesses were so that we can apply them in the future.
Okay, thank you. In a council manager form of government, what is your role in understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Well, again, I think it's important not to think of myself as a micromanager, as somebody who's going to get involved in day-to-day operations of the city. We have a very strong group of people who are charged with that. It's more setting policy, looking toward the future projects, trying to bring the voice of our constituents forward wherever possible, seeking to be a liaison to our constituents, and helping to guide city leadership in those things. But again, not getting too involved in things that would be left to professionals, which in this case is the city leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonnell. You may be excused. And our next candidate we have is Mr. Robert Farhat. If you could please turn on your camera for us.
Yep, let me try that.
Okay, all
You got me?
right. We got you. Okay, Robert, first question. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
It's already been mentioned, but it's going to be mentioned again. I think infrastructure is going to be paramount for all of us, and that's especially the working and ensuring that the pump stations that apparently lost the power, which I think contributed to the problems that we had in June. We want to make sure that there is a backup and generator for that facility, and this doesn't happen again, which compounded and made the situation worse. Additionally, I think that the schools are of extreme importance to me. That's another area of focus. Obviously, we've had some closures and continue to consolidate. So I want to make sure that we are doing the right things and ensuring that our public schools and our children are receiving the education and proper attention that they deserve. And then most importantly as well, I think is the business development within the city. Again, I think the city of Grosse Pointe Park has the most area connected to Detroit, and therefore I think it's an obligation to us as a board to ensure that we are growing our community and that we are also being inclusive. That being said, I think we've got some great opportunities that we can work with. For instance, the East Jefferson Development Corp. I've met with Derek Scott there a couple times, and have done some things with a charter school that's also right on the border of Alter and Jefferson. That again, these are ways that I believe Grosse Pointe can further grow, further blossom, and also give back, if you will, and grow the community as well as the neighboring Detroit city. So for me, those would be my three top priorities.
Thank you. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Sure. So I've heard it before. I'm very engaging. I've worked in all different facets in life with aerospace, automotive, electronics, industrial accounts and segments, growing the businesses, working with those customers, building the relationships, and again, bringing in that new business with the companies that I work for. So I am very good at connecting, very good at understanding situations, and I have a very, I think, ingenious way of kind of approaching situations, approaching potential problems, and finding solutions to those problems. So ultimately, I think I have many different abilities that I've gained over the years in both with work, both with my personal endeavors, that I believe will be a benefit and will continue to foster the growth that we've seen over the years. Again, I've grown up in Lansing, moved down here after graduation. So I've been in the park for almost 20 years and have lived from the Cabbage Patch to Beaconsfield, south of Jefferson, and now over here on Harvard. So I believe, with my vast experience in various areas, I kind of have a triangulation of the area of Grosse Pointe Park in which I've lived. And so I'm looking forward to using my skills and experiences to connect with the community and our neighboring city.
Okay, and final question. In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
So, yeah, I think the city, to me, city manager, they're the ones that are, in terms of supervision from the day-to-day activities, from the ensuring that the public relations and city groups, businesses that are functioning properly, that is actually the key focus for the city manager. As it relates to the city council, again, it was mentioned before. I think what for me, especially, coming into this new, I do have some experience with, like I said, that Detroit Merit Academy on Alter as the president of the board there. But ultimately, I think what I would like to contribute to the Grosse Pointe Park board would be to help with coming up with proposals and bills and ideas. And again, whether it's attracting new businesses to the Grosse Pointe Park in terms of different restaurants and different establishments that I think will diversify and add to what we have here. I think that to me is very important, and it's a focus for me in terms of the priorities. But back to the question at hand, I think for me, I would rather have the city manager kind of run that, and I would support that in the role as giving ideas, but not getting in the way and helping to move the processes along, whatever they may be.
Thank you, Robert. We really appreciate it, and you may be excused. And we're going to call up next to the table here, Mr. Mark Farnan. Mark, if you'd care to share your camera with us, if you are able to. Is Mr. Mark Farnan available?
Yes, I am.
Oh. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Jane?
Hello, Mr. Farnan. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Well, I think it really, looking at the amenities that the city's has given us for years, and now being one of the top places to live in the country, I think we can do nothing but better. And I don't know, it seems being with the foundation, we're running out of things to offer the community, but we've really enjoyed what we've done in the past, 40 years now. And I think that my involvement with the Grosse Pointe Park Foundation has made me aware of a lot of different things, including the council. There was a point in time where they were questioning our why we do it. So I'm looking back at days when Mr. Palmer Heenan ran our city along with Dale Krajeniak, and I could see nothing but great things happen. And then just recently, prior to the new council members, we saw a bit of turmoil, which caught my attention, really wanted me to be involved with the common council to see what I could do in that respect.
What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Well, I also, one of my business backgrounds was wholesale food distribution out of the Eastern Market, and being an old market, I think it's still is the longest fresh fruit produce market, open market in the world, or actually in the country, I should say. I'm sorry. And what we did down there is something similar to what DDA is. We formed with the help of Detroit Economic Growth, we helped situate a historic district that eventually led us to get grants through the Detroit Economic Growth company, or corporation, I should say, and restore different historical buildings down there, facades, I should say. And that sort of thing, I think, lends to what we need to do in the future is, not kidding about, or sort of kidding about with what the foundation did as far as the amenities, and we're finding it harder and harder each year to see what we can do. I think we even talked about infrastructure at one point, which is still being talked about and will be brought up at our next meeting.
Thank you. The final question, in a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Well, based by the government in Grosse Pointe Park, it's designated the city manager as the person to run the day-to-day project or day-to-day works with the city. The council, I think, is their job is to take different things, thoughts, and see what we can do in respect to working with the manager to fulfill those.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Farnan, you may be excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Mr. John Entenman. John, if you have a camera, you may turn that on. Mr. Entenman, I see you're here. Mr. Entenman, you should have a request to unmute. I see your camera.
Am I muted now?
I can hear you.
All right. As I said, I'm getting on my computer. You cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Okay, we do see a camera now, sir. It looks like it's pointed somewhere, but we can go ahead and get started. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Well, as my submission indicated, I have lived in this community for well over 60 years, and I'm concerned about a community which recently has some confidence problems in the direction in which it's going and its stability and consistency in city government. Most of the folks right now in city government are essentially new. I think when Nick was appointed back in September of 14, none of the folks that appointed him are still present. It's important to me to preserve the residential and friendly nature of this community, yet while accommodating, of course, gradual societal change. There are two issues that jump out at me in terms of major issues facing this community. One is the obvious issue with the flooding, the sewage and water problems, the EGLE, getting whatever certifications are necessary so we don't have the basement issues in the future. I happen to live on a street where in front of my home, every time we get a reasonable rainstorm, water exceeds the curbs, crosses the sidewalk, and comes up toward my front door. The other big issue to me is a school I attended, Trombley. I'd like to see what we can do to reopen it.
Okay. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
I did from law school in 1973 and went to work for a Detroit law firm, Dyke & Gossett, where I continued my labor and employment practice until I retired in June of 2014, 41 years. During that time, I practiced almost exclusively in labor and employment law, and a substantial portion of that practice was public sector labor relations. I represented communities such as Dearborn, Rochester, Plymouth, Huntington Woods. For many, many, many years, I represented public hospitals. I represented Washtenaw Community College. I have quite an extensive background in labor and employment law in the public sector. And I think that it is a critical issue for any city to deal fairly with its employees, with litigation brought against it by employees or potential employees, by dealing fairly and honestly with its unions, with whom I have some continuing and longstanding relationships. So in terms of any particular feature of my background, which I think can be of assistance to the city of Grosse Pointe Park, it would be that extensive public sector legal background.
Okay, and final question. In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
As others have already commented, I mean, it's a cooperative relationship. The council certainly oversees, to a certain degree, not day to day, but policy-wise, oversees the city manager, consults with the city manager. The council, of course, is responsible for policy and mission and goals. But it is the city manager whom the council needs to trust to effectuate the day-to-day successful operation of the city. And should she or he be doing a good job, then that person ought to be rewarded and applauded and left to continue along those lines. Frankly, it's leadership. The council needs to show leadership, and it does that by being as united as it possibly can, recognizing that reasonable minds will always differ. But if the council leads and the city manager can follow those rather broad guidelines, you'll have a successful outcome.
Thank you, Mr. Entenmann. We really appreciate your time. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to Mr. Brian Brenner. Brian, if you care to turn on your camera, please, and we'll give you a second.
All right, can you see me, Nick, or City Manager Seisland?
I can see you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Hello, Mr. Brenner. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Well, since the question is what interests me the most, I will skip over the obvious needs of the community, taking care of our water sewage, our lead water lines, marina, getting the public works building built, doing what we can to influence the school board for Trombley, getting our parking study done and implementing things for the master plan. Those obviously all need to be tended to, in addition to the financing of all of these, which will be tremendous. But since the question is specifically what interests me, that is the SCOP Center currently. It interests me, it excites the heck out of me, and it is an area where I think I could actually provide some useful information from my experience in food service and hospitality. I am very excited at the opportunity that it presents to really continue to build upon our flourishing entertainment districts. In my 40 plus years here, I've never seen Kercheval, Charlevoix, and Mac really flourishing and coming into their own as a real entertainment district for our community, not to mention, the other side of Alter. We're starting to see things in the Jefferson Alter area come around. So I'm very excited and interested, and I believe I can actually add some value as a council person with my experience having worked. I've seen firsthand what a a good relationship between small business and a good theater can bring. It is a tremendous asset for our growing entertainment district, and that is what really interests and excites me the most, but not to be confused with what I consider to be the most important issues in our community. Thank you.
Okay. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
The strength that I would bring, first and foremost, the way I see it, we have not just we all are well aware that we have a tremendous to-do list. It is a lengthy and very involved and technical list of things that we need to get done. And as a small business owner, I mean, getting things done is what I have to do every single day. It comes down to me. And so prioritizing, there are some things that need to get done yesterday, some things that can wait till tomorrow, and some next week. So we really need to be able to prioritize. In addition, what I can bring is the fact that I have prepared for this position. I have attended council meetings for almost every single one for nearly 2 years now, including many of the commission meetings as well. So I'm up to speed, I'm ready for the job, and quite frankly, kumbaya, I work well with others. Thank you.
In a council manager form of government, what is your role in understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Well, I've worked for many years in a private club situation, which is very much analogous to the council city manager relationship. I was on the professional side, but we answer to a board that answered to the people, the members, and this is a very similar situation in my eyes. As you know, it's a complementary yin and yang kind of relationship, whereby our city council, they're the voice of the people. They are there to listen to the people. Through that portal, they are to set the agendas that the administration is to follow, you know, where it is not 100% obvious. You know, some things such as the water lines, et cetera, that needs no introduction. That is very clear and obvious. But where there is some ability to set policy, that is the goal, the responsibility of the council, whereas the administration, they do all the real work. We set the agenda, we set the tone, they do the work. And again, it's a complementary relationship. You know, sometimes the goals of the people and the council are not necessarily realistic. I'm a big believer in setting aggressive yet realistic and achievable goals. And so that's where, again, the yin and yang, the complementary relationship comes into play. We can't do everything. We have finite resources, we have finite time. And ultimately, we set these goals, we ask the administration to get at it, and then we circle back and we have an oversight role, make sure that things are getting done as they are expected, on time, on budget. And that is, you know, largely our goal, what we do as the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner. You may be excused. And our last candidate for the first set group is Reagan Graves. Reagan, if you would like to please turn on your camera.
Should be on.
Okay, are you ready?
I am.
Okay, all right, let's get started. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
So I think that everyone has hit on the obvious. Infrastructure is important, but I think that for me, sustainability coincides with that, because in order for things to change, we also want to make things sustainable. So I think that's very important, but also the supportive aspects of the city with public safety and public service. Those I feel like do the critical work within the city. So I feel those are areas of great interest to ensure that those two services have the tools they need or whatever services that they have and the support that they're also looking for.
Okay. Next question. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
So I think my greatest strength is I have led a 24/7 mission critical telecommunications team within Ascension Southeast Michigan for the last 10 years. So my team has minute one plans for downtime. We are prepared at all times. So I think my emergency preparedness and my NIMS training for that really is a key strength. And I think that is very well applied to helping in a city, because cities, much like healthcare, don't shut down. So it's important to be prepared for the unimaginable and the things that come up. So I am quick at thinking. I am also really quick to, lean on those around me. And that's the great thing about a city council, is it's not just one person. We can all work together. So I'm always willing to work with others. And I think that's an important strength to have, and know that you don't have to just go it alone. There's a whole team of people and other members of the leadership within the city and around you. The other thing is I am very tenacious about researching. If I don't understand something, I am willing to research it. So I don't know that all the ins and outs of the infrastructure failures within the city, but I'm willing to do the research and to best understand and best make the most educated decision I can.
Okay. And our final question, in a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
So my understanding is the city council is elected officials, the city manager is an appointed official, and I think that's an important distinction. The 7 elected officials, they make up the legislative branch of the city's government, and the city manager oversees the day-to-day operations, budget, and key responsibilities, and there is a cohesive relationship in there. However, there is that significant difference between an elected official versus an appointed official. And this council is, working to push through ordinances and any necessary tools. But I think it's also important that the council manager relationship is set up in a way within, so for Grosse Pointe Park specifically, I know that's part of our charter and how it's set up, and that it is not, it's designed to remove politics. And I think that's very important to know in what's been a very decisive couple years, but our job is not to be political, it's to lead the city.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mayor Hodges, we're at approximately 5:50. I did ask the second set of candidates to join us at promptly 6 o'clock. So if you want, maybe we consider a recess till about 6:05.
Certainly, I think that's amenable, City Manager Seisland. So we will reconvene in 8 minutes. Thank you.
I'm going to be calling Mr. Terrence Arol, Michael McCush, Chris Harrison, John Scott, Daniel McGuire, Barbara Bossler, Tim Kolar, and Richard Eckert. So we'll go ahead and get started with Mr. Terrence Arol. If you could please turn on your camera, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Can you see me?
I can see you. So Mr. Arol, what we're going to do is ask you 3 questions, and you're going to get 2 minutes each for each question.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Sure.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Arol. What
Hello.
areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Well, being a lifelong resident of Grosse Pointe Park, I mean, I've been here almost, I guess, over 40 years. There are a lot of different places that I like to put my interest if given the chance. I'm truly into the beauty of this region. I really, really love the parks, and I love the idea of our beautification commission. I think that they do a great job. In fact, we were awarded a few years ago for a beautification award for our home on Westchester. And I was very proud of that because, you know, growing up here and seeing all the changes that have happened over the years, it was nice to get some recognition, but also be part of the idea that this place has a sacred, sort of beautiful history and background, and I really do invest in the beauty of this sacred town to me. So that would be number one, the beautification of the city and ensuring that it stays beautiful. I go on some morning walks, not as much as I should, you can tell by my weight, but I do try to get out there and get some exercise. And there's nothing more appalling to me than when I see, you know, especially down Jefferson, I see litter and I see trash, and I'll try to pick up as much as I can. But I just, you know, one of the things that I would bring up is the idea that we need maybe more receptacles for trash, just to see if citizens can become more involved in developing an appreciation for the beauty of the region. Now, secondly, I'm truly interested in the business aspect of this area as well, and I would encourage businesses outside of the city who are thinking about moving someplace to move here. I think that's an important part of making sure that our economy is going well, and that we're doing our best to make sure that the future of the park looks good. And then thirdly, I think keeping Trombley open is important. And what I mean by that is, I think that the
Mr. Averill, your time is up.
Oh, okay.
What strength would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Well, I think first and foremost, energy and big ideas. I'm a lifelong advertising person, meaning that I've worked in marketing and advertising for my entire career. I've also done a lot of coaching, youth sports especially. But getting back to the creative part of it, I truly believe that creative ideas are something that the city can truly benefit from. And I think that with my background in journalism and in writing and in promotion and marketing, I think that I could create and conceptualize some really interesting thoughts to help develop not only a business sort of plan for enticing businesses to come here, but also internal and external marketing for the city itself, which I'd be very happy to take part in. I think one of the things that we sort of forget about is that we have to lure people here. There's a lot of people who are sort of, I guess, set and willing to, I'm not going to say give up, but they're willing to let things happen as they may. I'm more aggressive. I like to go after things, and I like to make sure that, again, that this place remains a beautiful and sacred place for our future. And I think a great way to do that is to have things in line and things in place that will help lure families to Grosse Pointe Park. I quickly mentioned Trombley. I think there's an opportunity there to utilize that space for, bringing families in. And I can tell you more about that as we proceed, but I think it's an interesting aspect to have. And it's something that we should take advantage of.
In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Well, my understanding is that the city council sort of works hand in hand with the city manager. I know that a lot of the information from concerned citizens probably comes through their council members. And I would assume that there would have to be a hand in glove sort of relationship between the council and the city manager to ensure that, first and foremost, business leaders and donors and things like that have access to the city services and the city manager, his decision making. I know that there's probably a few businesses that we have contracts with that we will need to shore up and ensure that those are in place and that they're updated, and that the city manager has a say in sort of developing those relationships, as well as the city council. I believe that there should be no conflict of interest when it comes to businesses and city council members, as well as businesses and the city manager. But all in all, it's that ability to work together that's really going to make our government the pride of Grosse Pointe Park. I think that from what I've seen and from what I understand, our city manager has done an excellent job. And I think backing him up and ensuring that he has the artillery and the war chest to do the things that benefit the city are imperative of a city council. The decision-making can't be one-sided. It has to be, we represent the people, we represent the community. And I think that representation is not something that I will take lightly. And I think that includes ensuring that we have trust and we have a combination of forces so that we can get things done in Grosse Pointe Park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Arol, thank you for your time. You may be excused.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to ask to please turn on their camera, Mr. Michael McCush. I hope I said that right.
You said it right. You got it.
Okay, Michael, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions. So let's go ahead. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
To start, probably economic development. We have those 4 areas: Jefferson, Kirchville, and Charlevoix, and Mac. Seeing those continue on the path they're on. Some are a little bit ahead of others, but just to make sure they're the best they can be, and they prevents a strong foundation to build on from taxes and other things. Second would be the parks. I use the parks a lot, especially with this COVID and working from home. I'd like to make sure we maintain what we have and continue to improve on the facilities we have. Pickleball player, so pickleball courts would be nice to have a few extras and a little bit better facility. Next would be safety in the community and the relationships we have with the surrounding communities. We mainly border, well, pretty much Detroit is our primary community, but we also have Grosse Pointe City, and just making sure that we have a good relationship with them and we understand what's important to everybody in that. And then I'd like to make sure the community understands they can get involved and find a way to increase the communication and trust between the residents in the city through proactive, honest, and transparent communications. And then finally, to make sure we're making progress toward our long-term goals. We've got the strategic plan and make sure we're moving forward and always making the park a better place for the residents for the next 20, 30 years.
Okay. Next question. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
I'm primarily a finance professional. I've done the different roles for 2 global organizations, and I would work well with the budget and, as I mentioned earlier, economic development. I also have a background with a family business, and in that I've done a lot of different roles, from working with vendors, customer service, and growing that and making sure it's on the right path to make sure things are staying relevant, so you're growing instead of going backwards. Very good listening skills. Right, current company I work in is a global organization, so I have to cut through a lot of layers of bureaucracy. So my listening skills allow me to get input from different sources and make sure we get the real story and move ahead with where we need to go and get in the right direction. That's about it. Thanks.
Okay. And our final question, in a council manager form of government, what is your role in understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
The council sets the policy and oversees and kind of sets the framework, communicates the master plan, its missions, goals to the city manager, measurable goals, and provide leadership and make sure the city charter is followed. And then with the council setting measurable goals, the manager executes the plan, and the council kind of meets with the manager to make sure we're on the right track, and also approves the budgets that the manager presents, or the city staff presents to the council to make sure we're spending our money in the right direction. And you as the manager, you're going to manage the personnel. You're going to present ideas and options for the council to make decisions on. And that's about it.
Mike, thank you so much for your time tonight. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Chris Harrison to please turn on your camera if you're so available.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, what areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. First of all, I wanted to thank the mayor, the city council members, the city manager. This is an important role, and I really appreciate you opening it up and taking the time to interview so many candidates. It's a really important job to get the people who are best qualified for. I've lived here for 34 years, 27 at this same address, and I've been looking for opportunities to do more and serve my community. And now one of the side effects of pandemic is I'm able to work from home and have more time to get more involved in the community. It's a great time for Grosse Pointe Park, and there's really a lot of opportunity in front of us. I mean, obviously there are challenges. We'll talk about some of those, but it's a thriving community. It's a great place to raise a family, and we've been very happy here. And part of what interests me is to continue making this a great place to live. In priority order, public safety. It's something we often take for granted because it's done so well here, but we can't take it for granted. It's paramount importance. Infrastructure would be my second one, including water, sewage. We talked about the, Trombley being part of our community as well. That's an important issue as well. And Parks and Rec. I'm a frequent user of the park. I think it's important to remember it's why people move here. It's a big attraction for this city, right? It's part of what people really enjoy and love about this city. I love being at the parks and enjoying what we have to offer, as well as seeing my friends and neighbors at the park.
Thank you. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Thank you. I have a degree in business and economics. I also studied accounting and finance, so I understand budgets and how capital and expense works. I've read through the budget and have an understanding of our city's budget and where monies come from and how monies are allocated and what the priorities are. I've also studied computer science, and I make a living in technology and program management. And I specialize in helping organizations choose and apply services and evaluate and execute contracts for those services, both technical and non-technical. So I have a breadth of experience that allows me to understand both business, finance, and technology.
Thank you. In a council manager form of government, What is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Well, it's laid out in the document. It's not unclear, right? So it's laid out in the document that's been published. You know, the council are elected leaders who legislate, right? They're policymakers. They approve budget and capital improvements, right? The city manager, quite frankly, has a very tough job. And I wanted to thank City Manager Seisler, especially these last couple of years. It hasn't been easy. And I think, you know, there's the letter of the law about what each one does, but there's also the general goal, which is to be supportive as well as, you know, to do the functions of the city council. It's important we have a good working relationship between the elected officials and the appointed officials.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. John Scott. John, if you're so available, you could please turn on your camera.
Okay, is it on?
I just see your name, but not you yet. There we go.
Sorry. I want to apologize for the name. That's my son Owen's Zoom account. So.
Okay. All right, John. Well, we'll get started. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Definitely the infrastructure, because a lot of people, you know, just see the painted fire hydrants and you know, the cut grass at the parks and all the stuff that makes things look pretty, but you have to dwell deeper into the infrastructure that actually makes the city run. Like, garbage truck doesn't come, then what happens? You know, people start calling and complaining, and that's one of my issues. I live on a Friday pickup route, and when we have a holiday, you try to call GFL, and there is nobody to call. So I think that's a downfall, that you can't talk to a real person. I also believe, you know, obviously our public safety could use some improvement. I've always had an idea about why can't we have one Grosse Pointe school district? What's wrong with one Grosse Pointe public safety department? I think that would something that might be looked into and save money throughout the Grosse Pointes. Not saying that we combine all the cities, but one public safety department, shared services. We already share a lot of the 911 dispatch. Why can't we share public safety as well? So that's it on that answer.
Okay. Next question. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Well, I'm currently employed at the City of Warren in the water department. I'm a supervisor for the third largest city's water department. I've worked in the City of Warren since 1992, whether it's been when I started going to school, I worked in the Parks and Rec department. Then I moved on to the sanitation department. Again, now I'm a supervisor for the city, the water division. I've worked in municipal setting almost my entire life. I have never been in a position to write budgets, but I've worked well within budgets. I know about all the RFP processes. I know, you know, what needs to be done, like with the water lead service replacement. I know it's a huge expense. It's a huge expense for the City of Warren. It's to be an expense for this city, which to my knowledge, we haven't started. That'd be something that we definitely need to get into, because I know the timeline we have. Well, actually, it's not 20 years anymore. I believe we're down to 18 years to make all the replacements. I know about getting grants. The state of Michigan and the federal government have several grants to do that. So my strength is the fact that I've worked in a municipal environment my entire life, and I understand the processes. That's it.
Okay, and our final question. In a council manager form of government, what is your role in understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
Well, the city manager runs the day-to-day operations, much like larger cities that have full-time mayors. City manager runs the city, and the council and the mayor in cooperation, they set the goals and they direct the city manager to carry out the day-to-day operations of the city council, and the mayor combined. It's obviously a symbiotic relationship, that everybody needs to work together to get things done. But at the end of the day, the city manager is the one that implements all the directives and the guidelines that the manager, or that the city council and the mayor are directed to do, or direct the city manager to carry out. That's it.
Okay, John, thank you so much for your time. You may be excused. And next, we're going to go to Dan McGuire. Dan, if you could please turn on your camera.
Certainly. Thank you. Should be.
Okay, we see you. And Clerk Blayhead, if you want to get started for us, please.
Hello, Mr. McGuire. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
I would say the biggest issues that are facing the city, and it all really comes down to what people perceive as what their property value is going to be. People move into this community, they put a lot of money into their houses, their taxes, and so on. And what they want back for that is their infrastructure. And they want to know that the basements aren't going to flood, and they want to know that the garbage is picked up and the recycling's picked up and so on. And those are the kind of things that we need to work on around here. And there's a huge public perception of divisiveness within this city, that there's a sort of us and them attitude or something. And that has to go. That really, really has to be dealt with and taken away. I live on Lake Point, and there's people down here that just seem to think that everybody is out to get them. And that's not the thing. Everybody wants all of our property values to increase. We want our public safety to be good. We want our children to be secure, and we want a good community to raise our families. The question is, what are we going to do about it? It's going to cost money to get that sewer infrastructure put in. It's going to cost a lot of time and effort to do that. And it's going to take a long-term plan. And that's what people need to be ready for and know about. And that ultimately benefits all of them. But a lot of people, I don't think, see the long-term benefit or don't see the long-term benefit, and don't see how immediately making these improvements will help them down the road, especially when you're asking people to put up money and spend tax money to make an improvement that they might not always see the tangible benefit of right away. And so that sometimes becomes a perception and a bit of a selling issue. But that, I think, is the most important issues we have to work on, is just keeping things the way they are so that we can improve our community.
Thank you. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
In a strange sense, to kind of bring in backwards things. I've never been political in my life. My children are grown. I have absolutely no investments in the city. I work as a referee in Wayne County Juvenile Court. My wife works in the Michigan court system with the Michigan Supreme Court, and we are both, that's it. We don't invest in things. We don't have anything else. So what I bring is this. I bring experience of 10 years on the bench, 30 years in the court system, being able to resolve disputes, being able to put in long-term plans that, especially with juvenile court, we've got plans for children that go 5, 10, 15, almost 20 years sometimes as to how we see them planning out and working. I'm used to finding long-term plans, implementing long-term plans, and seeing them through to completion. I'm also aware that when you make public decisions, about 50% of the people are going to dislike everything you do. I'm good at following a problem to its logical or even absurd ends to see how it might end up in the long run. And I also, one of the things I think that I bring in its own is I know the limits of my own ability. I know who to consult, when to consult, and when I do not know something, and I'm not afraid to ask and admit that I do not know any further and consult people who do. Again, that is, I think, one of the things I can bring is that what we need is everybody to quit throwing up rumors and innuendo and facts and so on, and just concentrate on what needs to be concentrated on and focus. And that's one of the things that I think I've garnered the skill on over the years, is seeing an issue, focusing on an issue, addressing the issue, and seeing a solution to that through to completion.
Thank you. In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Well, to me, the relationship is much the same as would be, not so much with a legislative and administrative bodies of a tripartite government, but the council and the city manager acts as the sort of release valve or the check on what the city council's power can and can't be. Sure, everybody wants to go in and have their taxes cut to nothing and have better services and have all the sewer systems and the infrastructure fixed, and that property on Trombley easily either magically go away or have something wonderful done with it. But we have to decide, and everybody, the council can pass all the legislation it's wants, but the city manager is the one who has to assess that legislation and say, this isn't realistically going to work. We can understand what everybody wants, but we can understand what we can provide for them with the resources we have, or we have to, going back to what I indicated, I feel are some of my strengths, sell to the people the idea, let them know this is not going to be long, but we've thought about it. We've put into our homework into it. We know where to go. We've submitted it to the city manager, who has said this can be realistically done. And if you don't want, this is how much it's going to hurt, depending on what you want done. And those are the realities. And he's got to send that to the city council and say, that's what the best you're going to be able to give to people. Tell them that's what you can do. And the city council's job is then to go back to the constituents and find some sort of reasonable ground that meshes between what they want, what everybody wants, because we all want to go home and get a puppy and have a Ferris wheel on our lawn and everything else, but we can't afford that. So we have to be realistic, and that's the buffer zone. The city council has to be the realistic buffer between the people and the city manager.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. You may be excused.
Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. Have a good evening, everyone.
Next, we have Barbara Bosler. Barbara, if you would care to turn on your camera for us. Okay, I see you now.
Okay.
I had to go through all these screens. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
First, thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. The interest that I have is predominantly with the infrastructure. And many of you know, both from the emails from my brother and myself, that we asked a lot of questions to try and assist, but also understand what happened as a result of the floods. The floods pointed to a lot of opportunities for improvement. They showed that there's a role for everyone. There's a role for the property owners to do a better job preparing their own homes for things that we are responsible for. There's also opportunity for the city to strengthen its foundation, be it the sewers, the pipes, to the upper roads. There's also an opportunity to bridge partnerships with the state and city to identify funds and grants that we might be entitled to. So infrastructure has a broad meaning, and it goes to not only the building, the brick and mortar piece of it, but also the relationships, the partnerships, the resources that we need to really be building and rebuilding to make sure that we remain strong as a city. The next focus would be on the different kinds of partnerships. And I see them as being in identifying the businesses that make up the city of Grosse Pointe Park, also the hospitals and the medical centers. My background is medical records, and then I have a master's in education and a law degree. And I found, again, through the flood opportunities, that the relationships with the hospitals weren't always there. And with them having been so moved with the pandemic, it's important for us to do our part so that we're not burdening those same entities. The last area would be education, that we are looking at the curriculums, preparing our young people for the roles of the future and preparing them adequately.
Okay, what strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
I think my main strength is I am a credentialed person, but I'm an ordinary person, and I think that I appeal to ordinary people. Right now, I am an attorney practicing in the 36th District Court on the landlord-tenant docket. And what is necessary for that docket are quick answers. These people are dealing with non-payment of rent and eviction. And I've seen it both from the property owner standpoint and the defendant, who I'm assigned to protect. And from that, it requires developing good rapport with your opposing party. And as a result, you identify that we're all working towards the same thing, that in trying to meet the needs of one party, that you blend what the opportunities are and you work together, because in the end, that strengthens all parties. And through my work with the district court, I've seen many good things come from it. Opposing party has been willing to get furnaces into households. They've been willing to work with the SARA funding that Grosse Pointe Park would also be eligible for in these landlord-tenant situations, so that we are rebuilding the foundation, that we are getting the funds that are necessary in order to do those things. I'm also a very organized person. I am a hard worker, and I believe in answers. Those who know me best are those that I send routine emails, and they would always tell me a couple months from now, or there's a plan for this, and this weeks from now. And I would keep saying, we need the answers now. We need to know what we're able to accomplish short-term versus long-term. And that's what ordinary people are looking for. They're looking for knowing that things are better. They want to know what their part is in trying to accomplish those things, but also that there's a plan so that next month we're at a better place than we are today. And I can assist in doing that.
Okay, and our final question. In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
First, Nick, I commend you for the good job that you did in getting us through these terrible floods this particular summer. It was an overwhelming task. I look on the city manager as being someone who does do the day-to-day operations. I look on that person as having an expertise that not all the council members have. When you look at a team, not everyone knows everything. And so you try to establish who your team is to know where you can count on them. And where they don't necessarily know something, they have a network that they can tap into that strengthens and continues to build on that expertise. I look on the city manager as carrying out those day-to-day operations, as serving as the point of reality as to what can or what is and is not possible. But I look on the city council members as being representatives of the people. We are all there to serve the people. And so then the government is there to try and identify the best way to accomplish those things, that there's order, that there's safety for the people, that we have the right businesses, that the residents can count on certain things to be accomplished, and that together the city council and the city manager work together to make that happen. I look for good communication, for good reality checks, and that there be also good publication of what decisions there are and where we should be bringing in community resources more to make sure that we are all accountable to the residents that we serve.
Barbara, thank you so much for your time. You may be excused for now. And next, we're going to move on to Tim Kolar. And Tim, if you could turn on your camera for us at your convenience.
You hear me, Nick?
I can hear you loud and clear. All right, Jane, if you'd like to go ahead and get started.
Yes. What areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Great, thank you for that. Well, there are plenty of areas within the community that interest me. We have so many amazing commissions and committees here in Grosse Pointe Park, and they are each full of resident volunteers giving both their time and their talents to really help move our city forward. And while I play a role in all of those as a member of City Council, I think the two areas that I really focus on are infrastructure, but with a little bit of a twist, as well as in our financial committee. And now we all know about our water and our sewer systems and also our lead replacement project. Remain confident that those are going to continue to be getting all the care and attention that they need. My interest and focus on infrastructure would actually come through our Parks and Recs Committee. So there's the twist, if you will. And we all know Chad, our director of the Park and Recreation Commission, and he is just simply exceptional. For all that haven't had a chance to meet with him, I would encourage you, if you have not, to absolutely have a conversation with Chad. We are lucky to have him here in Grosse Pointe Park. But we have a marina that, per experts, is functionally obsolete. We actually have a Marina Subcommittee, and that committee is chaired by Larry Haggart. And that meeting is probably one of my favorite meetings of all the meetings we have in Grosse Pointe Park to attend, just given how Larry runs each one of those meetings. But our marina is such a pivotal amenity here for all of us in Grosse Pointe Park. And I didn't plan this, but I actually have a tie on with an anchor on it tonight. I think that's my thing with my ties that I wear. But these are some critical decisions that need to be made here regarding our marina. And those decisions, of course, lead to a tremendous opportunity to really engage the community. And if managed properly, and if given the proper care and attention, we can move from functionally obsolete to having an amenity that will be yet another landmark for Grosse Pointe Park. And for the financial committee, who doesn't love a good spreadsheet, right? But when it comes to our finances, there really is a way that we can communicate our financial position so that way people, our neighbors, can understand what that is. And I like to play a role in doing just that.
What strength would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Yeah, so some of my strengths here. I think the first one here is I had the pleasure of spending, like a lot of the folks here tonight, my spring, summer, and fall knocking in doors and engaging with thousands of our neighbors. And that has given me some amazing insight into the thoughts, the needs, the dreams, if you will, of so many of our neighbors. I talked to some who had been here for over 50 years, and I talked to some who literally they were having the moving trucks and moving into our wonderful community. I got a chance to hear their voices and their stories. And I think that really becomes a strength of mine, having spent that time engaged, walking our community for many months, like many of you did here tonight. I'm also in a very unique position with my day job for the state of Michigan. Some of you may know that legislators on both sides of the aisle in Lansing, they know my name and they're familiar with the work that I do. I work with legislative liaisons daily to interact with our legislators on behalf of my agency, as well as on behalf of the people of Michigan. And this unique position allows me to be aware of every bill that comes through our legislature. For example, last week, there was a $3.3 billion water infrastructure supplemental bill that was unanimously passed in our Senate. And within that bill, there was $1 billion in funding for lead line replacements. So as we as representatives advocate for our city, the work that we do every day and the work that I do every day in my job blends seamlessly with this work. So bringing this awareness of the happenings in Lansing is a clear strength that I have. Another strength would be that I would bring representation. I think I'd be the only member of our current city council with a child that attends Defer Elementary and another that is part of the Early Childhood Center at Trombley. Now, my council member Gallagher is currently taking the role of representing our city with our school board. And she did a great job last week or 2 weeks ago. I would lend a hand in supporting her in the important initiative of keeping Trombley open. I believe I'd also represent someone who has recently moved to Grosse Pointe Park in the last 5 years. It allows me to bring a perspective and connect with those who may not be familiar with Grosse Pointe Park, but chose to move here for all the right reasons.
Thank you. In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and the city manager?
Yeah, great. And I don't think I need 2 minutes to answer this one here because the answer is actually quite simple, and that is representation. That's the key word. And it's to bring the voices of our neighbors, both their concerns and wishes, to our city manager, so hopefully that they can be addressed. And it's also to provide oversight and to ensure that we are continuing to progress forward. Right now, as many of us are aware, we have a master plan process that is nearing its completion, a process that our volunteer planning commission has managed quite well, really engaged the community. It's been something to behold, participating and being a part of that. And that master plan, once completed, will essentially be our community roadmap. And that roadmap would be what we as council members should ensure is realized. Would then be our role and our responsibility to make sure that we as representatives of our neighbors carry out their desires as found in the master plan. And then the other role I think we need to play is consistent communication. One thing on the campaign trail that I heard often was a lack of information awareness by many of our neighbors and what the happenings are of our local government. So while I also believe that our roles is helping to get the message out, that message again needs to be consistent. We have to find ways to meet our neighbors in the mode of communication that is best for them. I think it's a vital and important role that we can all play to assist not only our city manager, but our city in its entirety by communicating effectively with all our neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. You may be excused for now. And then our final candidate, we have Mr. Richard Eckert. And Richard, if you could please turn on your camera for us. Richard, are you available?
Start my video. Are we green? Green to go?
We're good to go. Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and get started here. So the first question, what areas of focus within the city interest you the most?
Yes, thank you very much. First off, I just want to thank the council and yourself for your time, not only your time today in reviewing all these candidates, but also your time that you're contributing to the city. What interests me about this position is the fact that city government is the closest, you're the tip of the sword, as it were. So it's upfront and personal. The decisions made by the city have a direct and almost immediate impact on people's quality of life. In addition, the issues before the council today and in the future, they're not one-dimensional, they're not two-dimensional, they're three-dimensional, and they're all complex and they're all interrelated. So yes, I'm interested in infrastructure. I'm interested in my basement not flooding again, just like everyone else in Grosse Pointe Park. But when you consider that, you have to consider the budget. We have budget constraints in that the funds, that is the equity, the fund equity is being dipped into. It's untenable going forward. So when you consider, the infrastructure, which is, very interesting, it's probably the biggest issue before the council, but you have to consider then, what's the budget impacts? All the issues that come before the council are all three-dimensional. I mean, later tonight, you have to decide on, parking meter rates and are you going to continue to, are they going to be self-funding or not? And so it's the complexity of these issues that really, it's the challenge.
Mr. Eckert,
that
your time is up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have the time in front of me.
Okay, you're good. All right, we're going to move on to our next one. What strengths would you bring to the council table that would make Grosse Pointe Park a better community?
Right, the strengths I bring are the experience I've had, both immediately. I worked for a large global construction company where I had to, as a tax attorney, I had to understand engineering. I've dealt with engineers. When you think about the infrastructure, that is the flooding issue, you have to break that down into digestible component parts, come up with milestones, determine, you know, how that all can be achieved within a overall framework. I think if the council was to start today, you know, breaking ground in 2 years would probably be aggressive, but I think it's achievable, but it, you know, it needs to be broken down and analyzed into its component parts. And each of those has to be, there has to be milestones determined. This is not coming out as well as I had hoped it would. So the strengths I bring can be said in one word: results. You know, I've always been given difficult, complex projects, and I've always delivered results. And I have not done that on an individual basis. I've done it by working with a team, putting teams together and working through individuals. I think I'll end it right there.
All right. Our final question. In a council manager form of government, what is your role and understanding of the relationship between the city council and city manager?
Right. I think in business terms, you'd think of the city council as like an executive committee at General Motors that would set objectives and policy. The city manager would be like the chief operating officer, and he would be delegated with executing and achieving results. However, you know, I think that has to be modified by the fact that the city council is accountable not to shareholders, but they're accountable to voters. You know, as I said, it's upfront and personal. You know, and this has to be a fluid environment, and that as people raise issues, you know, perhaps objectives are changed. At the same time, you have to be interacting with the city manager because the staffing is fairly slim. So there has to be interaction with the city manager to understand, you know, what is he currently working on? What tools does he need to do the job to reach the objectives as set by the council? So I think it has to be a collaborative relationship. You know, you can't micromanage, but at the same time, you know, I don't think you can just put off, you know, all of these issues right on the city manager and expect him to expect you to achieve them and still get home at night.
Okay, thank you. That was our final
Thank
question,
you.
Mr.
Yes.
Eckert. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you.
Mayor Hodges, that concludes every candidate for the first round of interviews. I'm going to go ahead and state the process for what's going to happen next, and then if you'd like to say anything afterwards. The round one interviews are now completed. The role of the city council and mayor will be to email the clerk and city manager their top 5 city council candidates. The clerk and manager will tally up the results and announce publicly after a short recess from each council member their top 5, which will move on to round 2. Those who are in attendance and did not advance may be excused or welcome to stay the rest of the meeting. Mayor Hodges, I would recommend for Clerk Blayhut and I, and time for council members and you, that we maybe consider a short recess for 10 or 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, City Manager and City Clerk Blayhut, for leading this process so well. And thank you to all of our candidates as well. Community service is so important. There's a lot of competence at the table tonight. Obviously, I think our biggest challenge is going to be picking only one from among you. So as you've instructed, City Manager Seisland, we can take that 10-minute. I think we can accomplish everything in 10 minutes so as to keep the meeting moving forward. Recess, I would ask that my colleagues please readily and steadfastly submit their list of their top 5 candidates to the city manager and to the clerk by email as soon as possible so that they can then enter into the tally process, and we will reconvene in 10 minutes, which is at 7:01 p.m. To hear the results and then move on to round 2. Thank you. Member of council submitted his or her top 5 candidates. You are to total those. You will read each of our selections individually, so it's very clear and so that we remain in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. And then you will follow that by a list of those top 5 who received the most votes. So with that, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Hodges. So the count for Mayor Hodges: Terry Arall, Brian Brenner, Robert Farhat, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. For Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield: Terry Arall, Jay Bonnell, Brian Brenner, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. For Councilmember Fluid: Jay Bonnell, Barbara Bossler, Reagan Graves, Chris Harrison, and Tim Kolar. For Councilmember Gallagher: John Entenmann, Mark Farnan, Reagan Graves, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. For Councilmember Raylan: Jay Bonnell, Barbara Bossler, Reagan Graves, Chris Harrison, and Tim Kolar. And our final, Councilmember Wiener: Brian Brenner, Mark Farnan, Chris Harrison, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. Mayor Hodges, the totals of the top candidates, we actually have 6 due to a number of votes. With 4 votes each in advance is Marty McMillan and Michael McCush. And with 3 votes each, Jay Bonnell, Brian Brenner, Reagan Graves, and Chris Harrison.
Okay, so are you recommending that we move forward with the 6, or should we try to get it down to the 5?
I think just being that it's one more, I don't see it as a necessary problem, and that we could move forward with these 6 candidates.
Okay, is there any disagreement amongst my colleagues with that next step?
No disagreement from me.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Gallagher. It looks as though everybody else is in agreement. So with that, I would like to thank those of you who did not make the final cut, and would really encourage you to stay engaged in the community. One silver lining of this whole thing has been the ability to fill the pipeline of talent and leadership for council appointments to various boards and commissions and committees. And we hope that you, as I said, will stay engaged, and thank you for being engaged thus far. We very much appreciate your time and commitment to the community. Mr. Seidlin, I'll turn it back over to you to continue with round 2.
Okay, thank you. Just give me one moment while I share my screen. Okay, if I could have Marty McMillan, please come back to the interview. And please turn on your camera.
Can you see me? Hello?
Oh, I can see you. Thanks, Marty. Okay, Marty, how this is going to work, and for the other candidates, these are the round 2 questions. You are going to be asked 3 questions each, and you will be allowed 3 minutes per question to answer those. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the first question. If you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Okay. $1 million grant. let's go with the presumption that, we have the funding in place for the infrastructure and the lead pipes and that kind. I mean, that's because $1 million wouldn't do much. So let's assume that that's in place. But I think I would do something for probably the kids. Maybe I know that the the crossings for the kids, I think we could enhance those. I live south of Jefferson. I notice over here on, I think it's Westchester, they improved that crossing there. It's real evident that kids are crossing there now. I think that was a good improvement. I think we could do more of that. $1 million would definitely help put a dent into a crossing for the kids. Another thing I think I would do would be improve, let's say, some trees, plant some more trees in the community. I know we used to be the tree city, and we lost so many trees throughout the years, not only the Dutch elm, but some of the other ones. So I think I would plant some trees with some of that money. And thirdly, I think I would go to the director of public safety and look for their wish list of what might be in their their list of things that they would like to have, but they know it's not in the budget. But it's there, something that they'd like to have. And I think I would go to them and say, hey, what else do you guys need to help do your job better? And I think with the $1 million on those three things, it might actually work. But like I said, the cost on the lead pipes and the other infrastructure is going to be, it wouldn't put a dent in that. So those are some of the things that I think I would do if I was granted $1 million to do what I did. So that's my answer.
Okay. Can you give an example of creative problem solving from your past work history?
Creative problem solving. So now I've been retired for quite some time now, but when I was in business, I had a lot of different employees. So one of my strengths was dealing with personnel. So if I had, let's say, for instance, 2 employees that were working in a certain department that I knew that they were starting to be a little disgruntled, if you will, I would research and find out what the underlying problem was. And I guess I would get creative by finding that out from each one of them, and then somehow creating a scenario to take that away, take that issue away, to make them both happy and keep both employees. Because really, employees, when you have an employee, if you lose them, it takes so long to get somebody else that you bring in to take that position. It could take anywhere from 6 months to a year for that person to even get up to speed. So we never wanted to lose employees. So my strength was bringing those people together, figuring out what it was, and sometimes even changing a particular role, taking one role away from one person who was, let's say, their strength was design, and the other person's strength was the application. So I would somehow switch these things around, be creative to keep both people happy in their job and staying with our company. Another example, which I always liked, this one was, we had a certain supplier that always said, well, we can only make our route past your company on every other day. And I said, well, we need deliveries every day. Well, we come by your place at 3 a.m. And I said, well, we have to work on that, because we were getting our deliveries every other day, which is not, we needed things every day. So I had a garage door built in the back of our warehouse, and I did like the cinder block walls in the back. So they would come in, hit the buzzer, drop off the goods, and continue down the alley. And they could do that at 3 o'clock in the morning when we weren't there. So there were ways I had to be creative when I was in business, and personnel and was one of my strengths. So that's really about it.
Okay, and our final question. The city council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure its success?
Could you repeat that, Nick?
Yes, so the council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, or programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure its success?
Okay, yes, I'm willing to take on that responsibility and make those tough decisions, absolutely. In some of the organizations I'm involved in, it's a little bit different with city council because city council has now has everything recorded, but in our meetings in Grosse Pointe Park Little League, for instance, we bring an issue to the table, and whatever that issue is, it's not my, I don't have to win every battle. I'll say my piece, and I let everybody else on the board say their piece, just like I would with the council. We all have a say, but I think at the end of the day, once things are laid on the table, all the facts are there, and you listen to the problem, the challenge, and you listen to both sides, you make a decision. Now, if my vote is X and someone else is Y, and Y has the, Y is the way we're going out of this room with Y, I'm behind Y 100%. Because we've given it the thought, like I said before earlier today, I said I listen, I discuss, and then I'll take that information and go forward with it. And it's the same with the council it is with any other board. I think it's important to be unified. As you walk out of that meeting, everybody's got to say, look, we gave it our best shot. But this is where we're going. This is the direction we're going to go in. And I'm willing to do that and make those tough decisions for whatever's best for the community. It's not what's best for any council person. It's not somebody who has a certain way that they want to push something that they want. It has to be what's best for the community, and what did the governing body, our city council, decide which direction we're going to go in, and that's where we're going to go forward with it. So I really believe that's important to be unified and come out of there is one. Even though there's been cases when I know that I had a certain viewpoint one way, and this is the way, the direction. In fact, you can go into some meetings and think to yourself, this is the way I want to go. But then you listen to the other side and you go, you know what, that was a good idea. So I think it's important to be unified and continue to support what is best for the city.
Mr. McMillan, thank you so much for your time. If you could please stay on, we're going to move on to the next candidate. And we're going to move on to Mr. Michael McCush.
Hi there.
Hello, Mr. McCush.
Hi.
If you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Well, assuming it's unrestricted, I take it. What I would do with it, so it's essentially found money. So I would, you want to take this as a great opportunity to get input from the residents and other stakeholders, come up with a list of items, prioritize that list somewhat, then you want to quantify them, and then work with council and the city and make sure we get the most bang for our buck, and as far as the maximum value for the residents going forward. So it's pretty straightforward what I do with that.
Thank you. Can you give an example of creative problem solving from your past work history?
Sure, probably a few of them, but I work in finance, and so there are a lot of challenges coming up with creative ways to present data to people and update data. So I've created a lot of models in my work experience to put together variables that present output to make it, one, easy for the users to understand, and easy for variables change. You could update the models and provide for better decision making for all the different parties. That's probably one example. Another example would be probably with my family business. We had challenges with the economy, probably back in 2008, so coming up with creative ways to keep the business open by expanding our offerings so we could employ the people we had and get through the patch, mainly back in 2008, 2009, when manufacturing was pretty slow. So those are two examples.
Thank you. The City Council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, or programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure success?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. We always have to make hard decisions, and I'd be willing to take on the hard decisions. I think my experience in the past has always been to build a consensus of all the stakeholders, working with the different parties, having good communication, being transparent, having candid conversations. A lot of times there's always that 800-pound gorilla in the room or elephant in the room, and people just don't want to be candid. So I find being candid, honest, and transparent with the different parties and building consensus and an understanding provides for a great outcome for decisions, and it breaks down a lot of barriers that might get in the way of people's clear thinking as you move ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next candidate, Jay Bonnell. Jay, if you could please turn on your camera for us again.
Have I done that? Can you see me?
I can see you. Okay, let's get started. All right. If you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Well, that would be an outstanding thing to have happen. Mr. McMillan stole one of my first thoughts, was about the trees and getting us back to being the Tree City USA that we were so famous for many years, and still are so beautiful in that regard, but would love to see some of that come back. Another thing I was thinking about was the potential of doing something more with our gateways, the areas that are main feeders into the city at Caddo and Mac, at Kercheval, Jefferson, things that would beautify those areas, would make those areas marketing opportunities, marketing us as the premier community that we are, the welcoming community that we are, the diverse community that we are. Green spaces, landscaping, signage, things of that nature, I think could be really helpful to us. And another thing that I've always wished for our area, Grosse Pointe Park in particular, is getting a hotel company interested in us, laying the groundwork, possibly doing studies that are necessary to get some sort of upscale or mid-scale lodging opportunity. There's really nothing on this side of town where that has been taken up. There's been a couple attempts, a couple failed attempts. I think we're ripe for that. It would be a great way to attract further business, great economic opportunity for the city, could phase into lots of other opportunities for us. And I just think it would be a really premier project that I could see us launching with a grant like that, with $1 million grant like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you give an example of creative problem solving from your past work history?
Sure. I've had a lot of challenges in my work history. I've been given those challenges based on the way that I approach it, I think. My last assignment working as chief financial officer at a hospital, I was the smallest hospital in the 8-hospital Beaumont group. And that meant that when it came to funding, when it came to capital projects, I was the redheaded stepchild, if you will. And so the funding always seemed to make it to the 6th and 7th largest hospitals and then not get to me. So I had to come up with creative ways to get that challenge met. For example, we needed all new endoscopy scopes at one point, which if you're familiar with healthcare, scopes are a very expensive entity. They can cost $50,000 to $80,000 or more each. And Beaumont was basically penetrated with one supplier. One supplier handled all 8 operations. And so I approached another supplier and said, hey, if you would like to get a foot in the door, why don't we work together? I will present you with opportunities to market to our doctors, to do testing with our doctors, and see if they'll accept your product. That gets your foot in the door. That gives you the opportunity to go head to head with this other supplier. But then on the flip side, you're going to give me a big price advantage. And that's exactly what they did. Also, one profitable area of the hospital, of course, is radiology, x-rays, that type of thing. I got the idea to approach Ford Motor Company, which was another entity in the Wayne community, to do all of their employee testing at my site 24 hours a day, which brought people in from way outside of our geographic area and brought those customers to us who were doing their healthcare elsewhere. And that was a big win for our operation. It increased our revenues by hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
Okay, and our final question. The city council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, or programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure its success?
Well, I certainly am willing to take on those types of decisions. And I think one of the keys to it is over communication, communicating in advance, letting people have the opportunity to respond. I'm getting feedback here. Is someone else trying to talk?
I just muted. You should be good, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Giving people the opportunity to be heard, but as has been said previously, once a decision is made, it has to be as though we're all behind that decision, as though we made it ourselves. So there can't be any dissension in the ranks. Once a decision's been made, there can't be what we call crosstalk in our business. Once that decision is made, it has to be accepted as the marching order for everybody. And we all have to stand beside each other, give each other that professional respect that's required, but make sure that everybody, all of our constituents have felt the opportunity to be heard, and they're not surprised with things. It's not like we don't present a fait accompli. We've found a problem, we addressed the problem, it's over, there's nothing you can do about it now, and that's it, it's a done issue. I think that gives people the opportunity to feel heard and feel like the necessary inputs were done, the necessary due diligence was done, and at least if they don't agree with the final result, they can understand the final result and feel comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bonnell, thank you so much for your time tonight. You may be excused, and we're going to move on to Brian Brenner at this time. Brian, if you could please turn on your camera.
Hello.
Okay, Jane, you want to go ahead and get started?
Yes. If you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Well, clearly $1 million isn't going to go too far to solve our biggest issues. $1 million doesn't buy these days what it once did. That said, if it would put an EERV over the finish line or help towards that end, I'd go all in for that. I think keeping our basements from flooding is beyond clear as our #1 priority. Again, I don't know that $1 million is gonna, do much beyond buying a few feet of pipe and have it installed. So more realistically, I mean, as a city and a city council, I mean, we have really a never-ending to-do list. So, I mean, I start there. What do we need to get done? We have $1 million to play with, or invest, I guess would be a better way of stating it. And where can we make the most impact? That said, you know, things that would interest me that really aren't necessarily on the radar, if we really just had free money to play with, I would love to see some investment in our city buildings in renewables, in you know, solar panels, you know, maybe wind. I would love to see some EV charging stations. But again, that's just me, pipe dreams. Really, I think I would take a more logical approach to just assessing what our current city needs are. I mean, we have a new master plan coming out. We're about to do a parking study, so that will be filled with wants and desires for our community. And again, just see where we can really maximize the impact of that money. And quite frankly, I mean, we have budget shortfalls. It could be really most useful doing something as boring as putting it in the bank and making sure that we are financially whole or closer to whole.
Thank you. Can you give an example of creative problem solving from your past work history?
As I think I mentioned before, problem solving is pretty much what small business owners do every single day. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is if you had asked me at 6 o'clock this morning if I was going to make it in front of a computer by 5 o'clock this evening, I would have put the chances at pretty low. But you know, at work, I rallied the team. I explained the situation. I gave everybody a little bit more work than they are accustomed to, a little bit more than they are probably comfortable with. And they all got the job done. Again, you asked creative problem solving. I don't consider myself an especially creative person. I consider myself far more methodical and research oriented. And again, I think when it comes to problem solving, we have a problem. And again, I attack it methodically. We have a team in place that can get this, hopefully, problem solved. And again, who can do what resources, assess what resources we have to put towards the problem, and what is the most logical way to attack it. Again, not so much creative, but more methodical in thinking.
Thank you. The City Council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, or programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure success?
Well, I am, of course, willing to make controversial decisions. My sense is that every decision that you don't agree with is controversial to some people. And I think you really need to come at this with thick skin, understanding that every decision that you make is going to make some people unhappy. They're going to disagree with it. It doesn't matter what you do, somebody's going to be upset about it. You know, we could open a lemonade stand on the corner that's giving out $100 bills for free to anybody. And then, you know, people would complain about the traffic backups. I mean, no matter what you do, however seemingly simple and decent, is going to have pushback. That said, the way to show support for the city and such is really by making decisions that are backed by solid logic and reasoning. You know, it is true that we can have a problem or have to make a decision. We can be logical and reasonable and come to different conclusions. But really, that is the best that we can do. And then to be very clear with the community, sharing our decision, sharing the reasoning behind the decision, and not introducing any innuendo or anything that is not purely fact-based. I think that's, especially right now in our community, there's been a lot of that. And I really think we need to hammer home and continue to hammer home just straight, boring facts to our constituents and residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, thank you so much. If you want to stay on for later. We're going to call up now Reagan Graves. Reagan, if you could please turn on your camera. All right, I see you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. If you received $1 million grant to use for the city any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
So obviously everyone is dressed. It's not a ton of money in the grand scheme of operations. However, I think the first couple steps are, one, obviously consult the rest of the council, but also consult the city manager on area of greatest need. If there is any smaller projects, such as updating, public safety equipment, sometimes that, gets pushed back a little bit. I know we just recently, we were looking at the life-saving measures, and then any public service equipment that's needed. There's definitely small areas that could be improved, but I also really like some of the other gentlemen's ideas of the, planting more trees. And I really think that there are small things that could make a big difference in the long term. And I think it just is collectively, it's not one person choosing what to do with the money. So it's collectively coming together and figuring out area of greatest need and potentially holding that money, for a future need if possible.
Okay. Can you give an example of creative problem solving from your past work history?
Yes. So in my line of work, and I mentioned this earlier, we have to have minute one plans, meaning if we have a telecommunications failure, we have to be ready immediately and enact those plans. So we have created a business continuity plan that sometimes is rendered useless based on the issue. And the most recent example that is most relatable for people is while some people were figuring out their basements during the June floods, some who have AT&T may recognize that we also had major AT&T failures, and that affected Ascension St. John's main line, because we obviously use AT&T services, and it affected some of our emergency lines, and those lines are critical for patient care. So it was me and a team figuring out where we can reroute lines through to ensure that patient care wasn't impacted, and also communication, because while we have a local emergency happening, we're also in the middle of a pandemic, and loved ones want to speak to their family who's in the hospital. So it was important to enact that quickly. And then also on top of that, communicate with a staff of 35 what these changes are, how to recognize the differences in what is occurring, and keep them aware, as this went on for about 16 hours. So it was staying on top of it and trying to assist where I can, because sometimes you're able to jump in and then sometimes you're not able to. So it's about making quick decisions and also depending on others.
Okay, and our final question. The city council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, or programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure its success?
So yes, I'm willing to take that on. I wouldn't be here if that wasn't a major part of the consideration. And I believe in a democratic system, and knowing that, something I may want to, push forward, or maybe something I disagree with, it's part of supporting a democratic system. And I think that we are a team, and it's understanding we're just trying to make decisions that are best for the city and the residents and those that work within the community and have businesses in the community. So supporting that, but also supporting each other's decisions and when out in the community and hearing and speaking with other people, it's important to, be that voice of support and show that we are unified, even if in a vote you're not. I think it's important that, we don't contest it in an open forum and we support that and move forward. I think that will give the best example of leadership in the community, and then we can just move forward. But I'd also see it as a challenge to do my part, maybe a little bit better. Maybe I need to be, provide more of a voice, more education, more facts in what I'm trying to do. So I think it can also be an opportunity for myself to try to do a little bit better.
Okay, Reagan, thank you so much. And now we're going to move on next to Chris Harrison.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. Great questions. I love these.
If you received $1 million grant to use for the city, any way you wanted to use it, what would you do with it and why?
It's a great question. $1 million is a lot of money. It doesn't solve all of our problems, as others have said, but it is a difference maker. And what I've been able to do in my past and personal and professional life is look for these tipping points, right? Where does this make something attainable that we thought was never attainable before? And make suggestions about the things that, maybe we always thought were out of reach, but now could be within reach with that $1 million. What kind of major thing could we maybe put over that tipping point? I think the other thing, as a representative, in this case appointed, hopefully someday elected, it's important to take input from many different constituents, the residents, the business, the supporters of our city, and the city employees. When you listen in the city council meetings about some of the challenges the city employees face in our city, some of it's due to lack of having the funds to either get the equipment or services or the people or resources they need. They want to do great things and they have constraints. $1 million can remove those constraints.
Thank you. Can you give an example of creative problem solving from your past work history?
Sure. I'm actually going to give you two. I'm going to give you one from my personal life, which I think is just kind of fun and quick, and one from my professional life. I have lots in my professional life. As a technology consultant, that's my job, is to bring creative solutions. The personal life one is we've owned dogs for a long time. We're fond of golden retrievers. We had 2 golden retrievers. One liked to bark to come in, one liked to scratch the door to come in. And typically the one who barked wanted to come in first. Now, unfortunately, when he passed away and we only had the one who liked to scratch, he started scratching up the door. And so I put a little bell on the back door next to where the dogs come in. And I literally taught an old dog a new trick. I taught that dog, it took me a long time and a lot of dog treats, but I literally taught that old dog a new trick to ring that bell to come in the house and stop scratching the door. In my professional life, one of my favorite problem solving examples is I worked with a large automotive company and they were looking to better assist the dealership service employees in terms of searching technical bulletins and service bulletins and information they have on how to better and more quickly service vehicles. And they were talking to a number of big providers in the service space. And I suggested we talk to Google. Google wasn't known to be in that space, but it seemed to make sense. If you were going to look for good technology to find ways to find things, we ought to talk to Google. And we ended up actually choosing Google along with another provider and combining those 2 technologies. And my favorite part of this is we rolled it out in a pilot, and the dealers during the pilot said, we'd like to end the pilot right now and roll it out to every one of our employees. Can we do that? We're finding things and getting more help in speed that we never thought was possible.
Thank you. The City Council must render decisions regarding policies, projects, or programs that may be somewhat controversial. Are you willing to take on these tough decisions, and how will you support the city to ensure success?
Yes, another great question. So in my role on charitable boards and in my role at work, in my career and as a leader in my company, I've had to do it in both arenas. I've gained a lot of experience in it. I've always been willing to make tough decisions. Sometimes they're not popular decisions, but if they're the right decisions for the right interests, then I'm willing to make those decisions. Now, what I've learned more about in my professional career and my volunteer career as a leader is how you work through those decisions to make them more well understood and to reduce dissension on those decisions. And what I've learned is, one, you have to listen to people. Again, as a representative of the city, you've got to listen to the constituents about what matters to them. Two, you have to help educate them. And it's very important to educate people. I've been responsible for large teams where I've had to make very difficult decisions that impact people very personally, things like compensation, raises, bonuses, promotions. So you have to educate them about the process, and especially the parts of the process that are objective, so they can understand the factors that go into those decisions that are objective and the process that leads to the decisions. And there's usually some subjective part, and I think you just have to be honest and upfront and simple and clear about the things that are subjective. If you hide behind a bunch of policy, people see through that. You just have to communicate clearly how these decisions came to, even though they're not popular. And then three, I agree with several of the candidates who said that, you want to present a unified front once you've decided. You could talk to the people I've served with on charitable boards, and we may have been up late into the night talking about some policy change or something that we may not have agreed on, but we agreed when we made the decision, and sometimes it wasn't the one that I would have chosen. We were going to support it in a unified manner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hodges, that concludes the second round of interviews for these candidates. And so I'll go ahead and explain the next process that's going to entail with this. After completion of these round 2 interviews, the city council and mayor will email the city clerk and city manager their top 3 candidates. The clerk and manager will tally up the results and announce publicly from each council member their top 3. Those who are in attendance and did not advance may be excused or welcome to stay the rest of the meeting. Mayor Hodges, I would humbly suggest another 10-minute recess unless you have further comment.
I think that is a good step forward, Mr. City Manager Seisland, and we will do that. We will reconvene at 7:56 p.m.
Okay, just waiting on, it looks like Councilmember Fluid. Okay, all right. So thank you. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and list the names of the mayor and council members and their corresponding votes. Excuse me. Mayor Hodges, Brian Brenner, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield, Brian Brenner, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. Councilmember Fluid, Jay Bonnell, Reagan Graves, Chris Harrison. Councilmember Gallagher, Michael McCush, Marty McMillan, and there was no third vote. Councilmember Raylan, Jay Bonnell, Chris Harrison, and Marty McMillan. Councilmember Wiener, Brian Brenner, Michael McCush, and Marty McMillan. That brings our final 3 candidates to the following with 5 votes: Marty McMillan, Michael McCush with 4, and Brian Brenner with 3.
Thank you, City Manager Seisland. So the next step will be for this body to deliberate on a final decision that could take the form of discussion and or a motion. Oftentimes that's the best way to get discussion going is by motion. So with that, I will open the discussion. I see Councilmember Fluid would like to get us off the ground.
Well, actually, I just had a question. Since our charter does not allow us to abstain from voting, is it going to be all right for Councilmember Gallagher to not actually use all 3 of her votes?
I will refer to City Attorney Howlett to respond to that question.
Given the format that we're using, I think it's okay to not use the third vote.
Thank you, City Attorney Howlett. Councilmember Rowland.
Thank you, Mayor Hodges. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Marty McMillan to the open council seat.
I support.
Second.
Motion by Rowland, supported by Gallagher, to nominate Mr. Marty McMillan to the 2-year vacancy on the Grosse Pointe Park City Council. Is there any discussion? Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Hodges,
Yes.
Councilmember Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Fluid,
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rayland,
Yes.
and Councilmember Wiener.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously in support of Mr. McMillan's candidacy. Congratulations, Mr. McMillan. You are the newest addition to the Grosse Pointe Park City Council.
Yay, congratulations.
I have to say to my colleagues, I'm so grateful that we have a unanimous vote. I think that is a wonderful way to get started in building a team, and a warm welcome to Mr. McMillan. I do look forward now to filling that second slot. Mr. McMillan, perhaps our city manager has some guidance for you, or our city clerk, but I assume we should get you in and get you sworn in as soon as possible. And if you yourself have any comments, we would be happy to hear them. City manager, did you want to start, and then we can go to Mr. McMillan?
Yes, I just want to thank the council members and the public for being a part of this process and allowing us to do so. We do have another vacancy that'll be for the second seat, which will be considered at the December 13th City Council meeting. Those applications are due at final December 10th, this Friday at 3 p.m. And Marty, looks like we'll be seeing you at City Hall at some point. So if you want to stop on by, we'll have to swear you in and provide you some material and meet with the department heads. We welcome you aboard.
Mr. McMillan.
Well, thank you, everybody. I am truly honored. And as Mayor Hodges has said, I'd like to thank the council for this opportunity, obviously, and I look forward to working with them in the future. Also, all the other candidates tonight, it's really phenomenal to look at 15 different people and think to yourself how much talent we really have within our city. It really is amazing. And not only that, you have 15 people that put their name it went out there and put their name in the hat, so to speak. We have so many other people that do so many different things for our city that we don't even know. They're just doing it. And so I really am honored by this and look forward to working with everybody. So thank you all very, very much.
Well, a warm welcome to you, and we're very much looking forward to working with you. City Manager Seisland, could you let us all know when the swearing in is scheduled so we can do our best to be there to support our new colleague?
Will do. Marty, let's talk tomorrow.
Excellent.
Very good.
Moving on, and thank you again to all of our other candidates. Truly impressive and a very difficult decision. I separated myself from my agenda. I believe our next agenda item is public comment. Please correct me if I'm wrong, City Manager Seidlin. Oh, here we go.
You are correct, Mayor Hodges.
Thank you very much for that. So public comment, City Manager Seisland, if you'd like to manage this portion of the agenda, I welcome all. Remind you of your 3-minute limit, and I go ahead and Mr. Seisland.
Can I ask a quick question to clarify the process?
Certainly, Councilmember Fluid.
So just to be clear for all of the applicants, do people who applied for the first position need to reapply for my position? Are you keeping, how's that going to work?
City Manager Seisland, did you want to take that question?
Yes, Councilmember Fluid. For those who are interested, is if we're fulfilling your seat, Councilmember Fluid, whether it's the members that are that were here tonight or other new members, they may apply for the City Council seat. And as well, the 2 finalists, which were Mr. Michael McCush and Brian Brenner, will automatically move forward to the next meeting.
But they would need to let you know that they also want to apply for the second vacant seat.
No, as part of this process, there's 3 finalists, so those 2 automatically move forward to the next meeting. Everyone
Right,
else would have, yeah,
Yes.
everyone else application.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good question, Member Fluid. Thank you for clarifying that. City Manager Seisland, the public comment?
Thank you, Mayor Hodges. I have no written public comment, and I'll see if there's any spoken public comment. Seeing none, Mayor Hodges, I have no public comment.
With that, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Is there one?
Miss Mayor, can I add a comment in, please?
Certainly, Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, thanks to everyone for doing this today. It's unfortunate we couldn't talk to each of you for an hour to learn more about your visions and your thoughts. There's so many amazing candidates that, as the mayor said as well, I hope many of you will apply for commissions and committees. We need you to stay involved with our city and help continue moving us forward and progressing. You all have something to offer and important skills that we need. And I just wanted to say thanks for putting your hat in the ring. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you, Member Rowland. Well said. Anybody else? Councilmember Wiener.
Someone who's gone through this process, I really appreciate everyone being involved. But with that note, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Wiener to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by
second.
Caulfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:08 p.m. Have an excellent evening, all.
Thank you.
Good night, team. Have a good night.
You too.
Yahoo.